Hello again, class. Welcome to Psychology 2301. I am your instructor, Roxanne Elliott. This week, we will first start off by reviewing Chapter 1, Introduction to Psychology and Research Methods. So let's get started. We'll first start off by defining psychology.
The discipline of psychology embraces all aspects of human experience, from the functions of the brain to even actions of nations. The definition of psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Let's take a look at this. Let's look at behavior. Behavior processes would consist of overt actions that can be directly observed, such as crying. Other behaviors, eating. You can actually look at someone and see when they're eating, sleeping, talking, or sneezing. But when we look at mental processes, you really can't see mental processes. Thus, they're considered to be covert. These are private mental events that cannot be directly observed, like remembering, thinking, or dreaming. Today, psychology is both a science and a profession. As a scientist, some psychologists do research to discover new knowledge, while others apply psychology to solve problems in areas such as mental health, business, education, sports, law, even designing of machines. And then you have those that are teachers that just share their knowledge with their students. So let's talk about seeking knowledge in psychology. It may appear that psychological research just discovers what we already know from everyday experience or just common sense. But what if we really don't have much common sense? Or what if we haven't had enough everyday experiences and our common sense is limited to just what we know? Well, research has proven or indicated that what we think we know is not always accurate, and hence psychologists rely heavily on empirical evidence. And what that means is that is evidence gained from direct observation. Some of the goals of empiricism are to improve on common sense knowledge using scientific observation rather than causal observation. And scientific observation yields empirical evidence through direct observation and measurement that is systematic or carefully planned or intersubjective, confirmable by more than one observer. One of psychology's greatest strengths is that it uses scientific observation to systematically answer questions about all sorts of behavior. Psychologists use research methods. Again, these are systematic approaches to answering scientific questions. Now let's answer the question, what do psychologists hope to achieve? Why are they doing this? First off, the goal is to benefit humanity by being able to do some things like describe. How can we describe? Let's be able to name and classify various observable, measurable behaviors. How can we help humanity understand, be able to state the causes of behavior or to predict, which would make humanity able to forecast behavior accurately? And last but not least, control. We would like to be able to alter the conditions that influence behaviors. How does critical thinking play a role in psychology? Think about some of the various urban legends or superstitions that you may have even grown up with or heard throughout your life. What if we accepted all of these beliefs as truths? Like, I remember being terrified as a child when I heard that if you break a mirror, you would have 7 years of bad luck, or step on a crack and break your mother's bag. Does that ring a bell? And then you have the horoscopes, crystal balls, you name it. Well, let's talk about critical thinking. Critical thinking is the type of reflection involving asking if a belief is supported by scientific theory and systematic observation. If we want to be critical thinkers, we are willing to challenge some of the conventional wisdom often used in research. Some of the conventional wisdom and critical thinking is often used in research. Some of the basic principles of critical thinking include few truths transcend the need for logical analysis and empirical testing. Critical thinkers often wonder what it would take to show that a truth is false. Authority or claimed expertise does not automatically make an idea true or false, meaning that just because a person looks like they're credible, it doesn't mean that they're all-knowing and that their idea is true. So hence, critical thinking comes into play. We have to use critical thinking skills and processes to test these ideas and these theories. Judging the quality of evidence is crucial. Critical thinking requires an open mind. You have to be open-minded. If some of the forefathers of psychology would not have been open-minded, we wouldn't be where we are today. As opposed to critical thinking, there are the pseudo-psychologies, if you've ever heard of that. Pseudo means false, and that's any unfounded system that resembles psychology and is not based on scientific testing. So we've just learned a new word, pseudo-psychologies. Pseudo-psychologies are types of superstitions, like I mentioned earlier. More examples, there are various categories of some of these pseudo-psychologies. You've got phrenology, personality traits revealed by shape of skull. Imagine if you had a small skull or a strangely shaped noggin, and your personality, someone would say, okay, that person has a terrible personality. Look at the shape of the skull. Or palmistry, lines on your hands. Palms predict the future and reveal personality. I remember being a child and with some of my friends, and we're looking at our hands and we're looking for the M, because we heard that if you have that M in your hand somewhere, you're probably going to get married. Let's look at graphology. Graphology, personality traits are revealed by your handwriting. I have horrible handwriting. So if you have great handwriting, you're supposed to be a wonderful person, supposedly. So graphology is definitely a pseudopsychology. Astrology is probably one of the most accepted one of the most accepted beliefs. The positions of the stars and planets at birth determine personality traits and affect your behavior. I'm always amused when I hear people talk about their actual birth sign. I'm Aquarius, and that explains it. That explains my behavior. So astrology is where you get into the positioning of the stars. There are many reasons why these false explanations like astrology survive. Some of those include uncritical acceptance, tendency to believe positive or flattering descriptions of yourself, confirmation bias, tendency to notice and remember information that confirms our expectations and ignore the discrepancies. If you read a horoscope for today and it tells you that today is going to be a wonderful day, and you do have a wonderful day, then you might be more prone to believe in tomorrow's horoscope and the next day. And when you do have a day where that horoscope is not accurate or not even close to your day, we tend to ignore those. And then there's also the Barnum effect. Barnum effect, tendency to consider personal descriptions accurate if stated in general terms. Always have a little something for everyone. Make sure all palm readings, horoscopes are so general that something in them will always apply to any one person. So that's some of the reasons why some of these beliefs kind of have stuck with us throughout the centuries. Now that we've got that out of our way, let's begin thinking like a psychologist. We can start by understanding the scientific method and how it's applied in psychological research. The scientific method is a form of critical thinking based on careful collection of evidence, accurate descriptions and measurement, precise definition, controlled observation, and repeatable results. 6 basic elements would be making observations, defining a problem, proposing a hypothesis, gathering evidence, testing the hypothesis, theory building, publishing results. Are scientifically testable predicted outcome of an experiment or educated guess about the relationship between variables. The operational definition defines a scientific concept by stating specific actions or procedures used to measure it. A theory is a system of ideas that interrelates facts and concepts, summarizes existing data, and predicts future observations. A good theory is potentially falsifiable so that it is open to disconfirmation. Okay, let's rewind. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about the history of psychology. People have been informally observing human behavior and philosophizing about it for thousands of years. But the psychology's history as a science only dates back to about 130 years ago. It started out in Leipzig, Germany, where William Wundt, we call him the father of psychology, set up the first lab to study the conscious experience. And this took place in 1879. Wundt wondered and wanted to study about what we experience when we are presented with certain stimuli, various images and feelings, and he found out a way to set up observations to measure how we respond to these various stimuli. This is called introspection, looking inward, examining and reporting our thoughts, feelings, etc. Wundt's ideas were brought to the U.S. by Edward Titchener, and renamed structuralism, which dealt with the structure of mental life. Many of the structuralists often disagreed. There was no way to use introspection to determine who was correct. Another scholar, and he was an American scholar, by the way, his name was William James. He broadened psychology even further to include animal behavior, religious experience, and abnormal behavior. William James is responsible for functionalism, which is mental structure, in which we believe mental structure is less important than mental function. Functionalists admired Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection. Animals keep physical through evolution that help them adapt to environments. How the mind functions may also help us adapt and survive. Educational psychology emerged as a result, and it was promoted by functionalists as the discipline that studies mental adaptation. Study of learning, teaching, classroom dynamics, and related topics fall under educational psychology. And the next school of thought, and probably my favorite, is behaviorism. John Watson, Ivan Pavlov, and B.F. Skinner with his Skinner box. Behaviorism helped make psychology a natural science rather than a branch of philosophy. Some of the key things to remember about behaviorism are that psychology must study observable behavior objectively. Studied relationships between, this is what behaviorism did, studied relationships between stimuli, environmental events, responses, any identifiable behaviors. And then Watson studied classical conditioning, which was discovered by Pavlov. Skinner studied operant conditioning, and although Skinner studied animals, he believed humans learned the same way. I never will forget when I was in my undergrad studies, I had to read a book called The Demonic Male, and it was a book about these apes. And these apes would go and they did a lot of things. They were being observed by researchers. These apes would go and they would kill like some female ape's children, and she would leave her current mate and go be with the one that killed her children because he was a better protector. And researchers, they proposed that some of these lower things that were going on were similar to what things that happened in human society. Things like the lower ape that wasn't as big as the bigger ape didn't have his pick of female apes. So it was very interesting, especially when compared to some human behaviors. But hopefully the females in the human race won't, leave their husband for someone that kills their children. That's just preposterous. But some of the theories that were presented were plausible. More on behaviorism. There's radical behaviorism. Mental events such as thinking are not necessary to explain behavior in this area. There's cognitive behaviorism. Together, cognition and conditioning better explain behavior according to this school of thought. And under this school of thought, our thoughts influence our behavior and is used often in treatment of depression. Then we have Gestalt psychology, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Max Wertheimer studied thinking